a warm welcome to you all to this Ask Us Anything about business maps and the Milky Way. So we're going to jump straight into your questions and hopefully some answers. And then we're also going to show you some demos of mirror layers and Airtable and things you can do with the Milky Way tool, and a bit more about the next steps. And the two of us here today is me, Cecilia, and Thomas. I've been working with the Milky Way for about 10 years and that method. I'm also the author behind the book, The Milky Way. And over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, I met actually you, I think 5+ years ago. I have been like the forever project manager between IT and business. So I different roles, same function. And then finally I found the method that completes the discussion between the IT and the business. So from there on, I worked with you closely, and then with this method as well for the past 5 years. And I really love it, and I really love what we have done together in Miro and Airtable as well. And then we have another guy who isn't here with us today. His name is Max Harper. And we found each other in a community, Miro community, where I actually asked about if this were possible to do what we actually did within Miro as a plugin, and we're going to show that a little bit later as well. So that's our real Miro and Airtable guru. We are gurus as well, but that's the real guru of it. So there's level of the guru-ish level, and he's definitely one of those.
Yeah, and a lovely guy, wonderful to work with. So some of you used the link beforehand and asked some questions. So one of the questions we got is, what is your definition of a business map? And we also got a question that was sort of related, or at least we could answer at the same time. How can I use the map for analyzing business performance? To start with, we use the word map. And I know that sometimes we can use model and map sort of as synonyms, but I do think there's a really big difference between actually a map and a model. And so I'm going to go a bit into that, because there are so many ways to describe an enterprise. So take me, for example. So I'm working for this organization. I might get some text about where we are heading for the next year or 5 years, depending on, you know, the horizon. And I try to figure out what of that can I contribute with. And then I go to finance, and they give me some financial results, usually in the form of Excels or something similar. Then we have a lot of ongoing projects. I need to know what's going on, if there are any delays, who's going to be in which one. Someone is presenting me with a new process model or an existing one that I need to relate to, and also figure out who's in charge of whom. I use an organizational chart for that, and then I go over to the IT department, and they show me how everything is connected. And from these different models and different fragments that I see and sort of run upon, I make my own mental model in my head of what is actually going on within this organization. But then I might talk to Thomas, who's like working at some other part of the organization and has seen a lot of new or other kinds of models and read other documents, etc. And then we start to talk together. And since we've sort of puzzled this together in our heads, there's a risk for misconceptions, because what are we actually talking about? But there are other mental models out there. So we've all been in this situation. We're presenting ourselves. Here's one saying, I come from Fiumicino near Rome in Italy. And hopefully no one in the room gets any of these kinds of pictures in their mind. Hopefully they all start with from one and the same model. They start with the map of Europe. And I might never have heard of Fiumicino, but I got some more information so I can rule out most of the map because I heard Italy. I might be able to zoom in towards around Rome, and who knows, I might even have had know someone who's from Fiumicino and been there and visited. So I might have this kind of mental model in my head about what it looks like there. But regardless of how much you can zoom in, you at least start from one and the same model. What are the benefits of a geographical map? Now, coming into the differences between a map and a model. What you see here is Sweden, a map of Sweden. The southernmost part of Sweden is called Skåne, and it's always going to be at the bottom of the map. It's not going to jump around because we've decided on a direction in the map. Another thing is that they come in different scales. So anything from orientation maps up to world maps. And what we do is we lose some details, but we can see other things if we zoom out. It's also a very stable representation of the world. The oceans and land masses aren't going to move, at least not during our lifetime. The cities are going to be where they are, the rivers are where they are, the mountains are where they are. Who's in charge of what area right now? That might change from time to time, but that is really an overlay. It's not part of the map itself. And what's really interesting about maps is they are combining very different sorts of information in one and the same picture. So if you remember, once upon a time when driving in our parents' cars and there was nothing to do, there was no phones, no distractions, you had to look out, or you could take out one of those maps with where are we and follow along. I was one of those geeks. But it would have been very difficult if the map only showed the topography, and then I had to go maybe to a list with all of the cities being listed, and then sort of a connection network wire diagram of which roads connecting to what, and then trying to navigate between them, which is usually what is happening when we're looking at different models. We can't really relate them to one another. Instead, what we've done in a map is that we placed all these things on top of each other to create a higher meaning. So combining information. We also don't take it for granted that they are self-explanatory. We've all had geographical lessons in school, hopefully, which leads to that we can all have one of the same view about the planet that we live on. And given that it is a stable representation of the world, I can use that as a foundation to add information that changes a lot quicker. For example, how to navigate between two places. I live in a suburb outside of Stockholm, and going into the big city, vastly different time scales. If I start like 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock on weekdays, that is. So it's going to present me with different routes, different times, etc. And something that we might not think about, but the map itself is a really good anchor model for us to remember a lot of other things. If I say Mahatma Gandhi, we will sort of see India in front of us. Or if I say Martin Luther King, we will all jump towards the US. Well, depending on where you're visiting from in the world, you will see, you might be moving in some other direction from me in Europe, but you get the point. So it really helps us connect other information because we have somewhere to anchor this, which helps us remember stuff. Now, can we create a shared map of an enterprise with these kinds of benefits? And the first question was then, well, what are we going to have as our north? And what we do is that we visualize the overall value flow. So here's a fictive training company that we call Unibis. What do they do over and over and over again? Well, here's the center of the map. It's what we call the hub. And what they need to do is they have to start planning what courses are we going to give for the upcoming term. And then they have to produce these courses, then marketing and sell them, deliver these courses, and then have some follow-up, what went well, etc. And they do this over and over again, and the follow-up becomes the input to the next planning of the next year. And just by doing these lines out from the hub, at least we've sort of found some sort of continents on our canvas or on our map. And then we can start to ask questions like, but what is actually happening within these different sectors? And we might start at some high level and then go around, talk to everyone inside of the enterprise and figure out what is actually going on. And then we find what is being done. These are our business capabilities. The thing with business capabilities, we don't only ask what you do, we also ask what IT applications are you using, why you're doing this work, and then we add them to the map. And then we also ask, but what kind of information do you produce that someone else is interested in knowing about? And then we add that to the map. And since we've also placed it in the accordance with the overall value flow, we can add the environment to this. So we can add our customer journeys and which capability is going to be responsible for which touch point with our customers. But so what? We had like loads of different models about our enterprise. Why do we need one more? What can we use the map for? This was the situation, right? I'm being bombarded with all these different views of a company. Well, if we take the map, we can start to ask questions to it and figure different things out. One very important thing is, how do our products and services actually move through our organization? So we can do our different value streams, because these products and services are going to use different capabilities in order to create value for their clients. And we can add them, the different ones. So we might have two here. Onto that, it might be interesting to start to figure out where in their overall life cycle are these products and services, because that's going to be very different questions to answer within an organization. How do we introduce a new product so that everyone within our organization knows it's coming? And how do we sort of build on a mature one so that it won't go into decline but still be relevant, and we can keep on selling this service or this product? Another one might be the IT applications, and they also live according to some sort of life cycle. Here we've added that, well, it looks pretty bad for this little poor Unibis company. Quite a lot of applications that are maybe reaching end of life. But by showing who's using these applications, we can at least get an idea about how are these systems being used. And the question there is, how are we going to replace this? What do we actually want to do within the different business capabilities that we might not be able to because of how old the system is that we work in, or restrictions it has? What are we looking for if we're gonna replace this or these systems? And the question when we introduce a new system is completely different. How do we train people within the organization to use this in the appropriate way? And that might tell us a bit more than maybe looking at the application model of how we've connected these ones. I mean, both of them are really important, but to get an understanding of who's really using these applications for what purpose, then it's a lot easier to see that from a Milky Way map. We can also add the organization chart on top of the map and see if it's, how are we really organized? Is it like silo or is it all over the place? I've seen all different kinds of examples on this, but it at least can help us clarify who's going to be responsible for which capabilities, because every change we're going to do, we need to figure out who do we need to talk to, who's the manager of these capabilities. Then we can start to ask questions to the map as well. Maybe from the idea of where we're heading, what are the areas that is going to be most affected by this upcoming strategy, etc. We could ask that kind of question maybe. Or where do we have problems within our IT systems, or even questions like where are people soon going to retire within our organization? Where do we need to do some knowledge shifting? It's very good to ask one question at a time so that we're not really all over the place, because then we don't really know how to prioritize and start. And you can ask all different kinds of questions to the map. Ongoing projects as well, add them to the map and see which capabilities are going to be affected, because these people are continuous working in their different capabilities to create all the wonderful products and services and contributing to them all the time. But at the same time, they should work with something that is going to be changed. And especially we combine that with like the IT view of it. So one IT system may be used in very many different capabilities, but in very many different ways. So have we really understood how this change is going to affect the organization overall? And then take our finances. What do we spend money on in changing? Is that actually where we have the problems, or is this sort of just ongoing budgets that is running from year to year? So coming back to me in this situation, right? So here I am. I had all these different models. Well, where are we heading? Well, make the analysis on top of the map. Our finances on top of the map. Which projects are ongoing and what are they affecting? And someone might come with this process, depending on where in the level you are. It might be, okay, that process is being used in one specific capability, or maybe it's a larger one and you can do some sort of value stream across the map to understand where it's heading. For the organization, put that on top of the map as well. And also coming over to IT systems, which ones are we actually talking about? And finally, I can make some sense into all of this and start to combine them and see if they're actually telling me the same thing, or if we're sort of going in different directions, giving that we haven't seen how they actually collide.
So what is the best way to add detailed information and business capability information flows and value streams? So if we look into a normal map, I mean, it looked like this, and now this is in Swedish, so it's a little bit of IKEA. So here we have overlays in Google Maps. So instead of having all the information in the map, we always do a simplified version of it, so we can actually see what we want to see. So in this case, I probably want to see where do I have, for example, a restaurant or something else that I want to look at. What I actually can do is, if I have that, I can see a plumbing and electric and a lot of other stuff as well in another layer of a map. But we like to think of maps as layers. Here we are within Miro. So this is actually what Max Harper helped us with a few years back. So if we put everything on top of each other in a map, it's very, very soon get a little bit messy. But if you're familiar with Miro, one of the features that we really would like to see them build is layers. So because of this problem, we actually build that for ourselves. So here we can remove highlights, we can remove projects, we can remove the touch points, and so on, and just look what we want to see when we're talking. For example, I just want to see touch point and projects. So then I can see that. And here also I can say, well, I don't need to see informations and I don't need to see the systems. So now it's a much cleaner map to have a discussion around. And the ones that knows me knows that I like to draw in a map, like you have that whiteboard and be present in the team. And I like that people in the workshop write something for themselves in the map. Just go ahead and do that when you have a workshop. So that we believe is a really good way of facilitating the discussion. So that is one of the tools that Max helped us build. And the another thing, which were another question, so how do you work with this data in the long term? So you have a lot of data already in this map. So for example, if I go to, for example, course administration. So here I have a few systems or tools. They can be tools, can be system, can be something physical as well. So it can be a pizza oven, for example. So that these are the tools that I need to do this. But from this point of view, it's IT systems. So I actually had a project where I called Cecilia and said, well, now I mapped out this organization. So that was like, I don't remember, 150 capabilities and 450 system. What do I do now? And the answer was, now you write it in Excel. No, I don't. So what I asked Max, can we actually transfer this to Airtable? And we both were fond of Airtable. So these are the examples that that we actually did. So this is the end goal for that. So then I can see that this is the interface in Airtable, and this is the actual data in the Airtable. So these are what you see. So for example, you have this capability that are connected to the system. So these data is then connected, and then I can create this one, which is a clickable interface. And within that, depending on what kind of data I have, but I would show an example. So here I open digital booking, and I maybe have described a process within that. So I can make that for the client, and the client can continue working with that. And you're familiar with Airtable knows that they can comment and even change whatever you want them to change within Airtable. So we would say that most of the data in the long term will be held within Airtable and connect that with whatever data you're already having. But this one will also continue grow. But here, the capabilities and systems here are the master of the data. So these are the master files that we send over to Airtable. So that is what we have built here. And for those of you who are interested in layers, you can sign up on Milky Way International. We're going to show that later on. You can sign up here on Milky Way International, and then you can test layers for free within Miro for a month. So this is actually how it works. So you connect the database, just writing whatever the database the name is. And after you have connected, you press sync, and then all the data is populated within Airtable. It's basically that. So it's a one-way sync today that goes from Miro to Airtable. Yeah, that was one question. Then we have another one, Cecilia. What is the prime benefit with the Milky Way method comparing to other process models?
Yeah. So go on towards frame 8 there, and we'll start to just talk a little bit about it. One thing is speed. You will have a decent map within 3 weeks. I hope that answers your question there in the chat as well. A really stable one after like 6 weeks, depending on, you know, how far you want to go. As we said, you can have and always start with what you can map. It's really interesting to look at like old maps of the world. They map what they knew of the world. So we have one, Herodotus, I think he was Greek, like 2,500 years ago, he mapped out that the world was made up of Europe, Asia, and Libya. So you might find a continent which then ends up to be the wrong name, and you've forgotten a lot of them, but at least you got benefit from it. So start to do this and start to use it for making analysis, and if it teaches something new. Another
one thing about stable, which I think is interesting, quite soon, not after 6 weeks, but quite soon it will become really stable, because it's actually not changing from what you do so much. Other things change, but not that. You're still making your offer and making your invoice and deliver whatever you deliver. So that is quite stable very soon. And so we see organization where we have done it and it doesn't actually change so much.
No, it's more details. But at least then everyone is familiar with the map overall and can follow along. And one of the other things is that we see everything at once. Usually what we do is that if we do process models, they are sometimes in one of those systems where you break them down into sub-processes. And each time you click at one process and move down, what happens is that you lose your ability to see everything around it. And it's like looking through a straw, and you go more and more into detail, and you don't really see how that affects anything else. And one of the benefits actually is that you can have different scales in a Milky Way map, and it's totally fine, because some areas aren't going to be a problem. We don't really need to open up all of South America on the map. If there is no problem there, why mess with it? But there might be a problem in Europe, and just around the Stockholm area seems to be really, go into that and make more smaller capabilities there to really figure out what's going on. So that's one of the things, you see everything at once. If we go over to these sub-processes are usually a mirror of different departments as well. And it's hard to figure out when different departments actually interact with one another.
Okay, let's see if we have some more questions. It's from Rogers, and partly I have talked about that because one of the problems that you have with whatever model you have is that who is going to take care of it? And the plain simple answer is where it's needed. So for example, if it's needed in project management or project portfolio, if it's needed within a program, if it's needed for HR to plan resources and staff and so on, then it's actually there. It should be and it can of course have different perspectives. But one thing that we see, it's if it is within IT, then it will be an IT perspective of it. So and we would like it to be something that is supporting the enterprise. So therefore, it shouldn't be directly connected to IT. Sometimes it's there, but often I think it's better to have some working from, for example, user experience or so from the customer point of view, because then it's actually truly will be a map for the customers and for the enterprise rather than an IT or a new IT model.
Yeah, and we're really allergic to like filling in a form and having, I mean, you have to do all the processes everywhere. Well, why? I mean, do them where it's absolutely necessary to be compliant or whatever your need is. But and that's why we also love Airtable, because there you can, you know, try something out. Okay, we add this information to it. Now, can we maintain it? Do we have, is this important for the organization, or was it just a fling? Because as we were saying with these overlays, it's information that is rapidly changing. To keep stuff that is more stable, add those, and then for a while something might be of interest, add those, add some metadata to that, and then change in Airtable depending on what is of interest for the organization right now. That also makes it difficult. I mean, if you buy an EA product, it just tells you what you should add to it. Sort of, you don't have to think. But it's the thinking that we think is important. What is actually important right now for the organization, and try it out, see if you see something new. If not, you've learned something.
Yeah, and we truly believe that using the map, the main purpose is for communication. So you're addressing a problem, you're addressing a program, a project, or whatever you're addressing, and have new perspective that you can add to the map.
We've got a new question there.
Yeah.
Here. If you have a team that has multiple applications they support, would each system be a category, or would the tasks they provide be a category? Help desk, development, strategy, etc. If I understand your question correctly, is that you have a support team. So what the Milky Way does first and foremost is to map the overall value flow. So we don't have, even if I work with business architecture, I don't have a business architecture capability in the maps. I look at what do I do, where do I come in and help different capabilities in the map. So if you've mapped the organization, what it does, and see who's using what kind of support systems, like the analysis we did with the different departments on top of the map, you can do a similar one with which IT teams are supporting which systems and also how those systems then are being used, because they are in a capability. So then you can look at who's actually helping whom, and you can actually start to actually go out and sit next to the people using the systems every day and figure out how to help them to make their work quicker and easier.
It's a question about Milky Way map here and the intersection group EDGI. Yeah, well, it's origin from the same place. So yeah, that's correct. So
exactly. So Annika Cleaver, who used to work at IRM, where Thomas and I also are working, she did the pioneer work with the Milky Way. That's why I joined that organization. And then they've added different stuffs on top of that with strategy and stuff with EDGI. But this is, I think the important part in EDGI is really the Milky Way map. So yes, they are using the same.
And from what we see and why we still stick to this one, and it's actually a work in progress that we're going to do now. The next coming months is to see if it's even going to simplify even more, because we believe that we are both enterprise architect, but we believe that a lot of the communication is lost in translation. So we need to simplify it even more, not make it more complicated. And then you can use whatever you need around it. And in every organization had their sets of way of planning and doing stuff. So we are not interested in mixing in that. So that is why we stay true to the center of it. Yeah. Okay, so how do I find stuff? Well, we have a website, so you can start by getting there. You can sign in, and when you have signed in, you get to test out the free tool. You can install it on if you're admin on your team, or you create a free team. So then you can test layers and what you saw in that tool. So you come to a welcome page, so you have license information, and then you have a Pioneer course. And the Pioneer course is a free course, so it's the template, the old Mirrorverse. We're currently just said today that we should do a new one.
So the Pioneer course is really for you who to experiment with the Milky Way. There are some guides, steps you can take, and try to start to make your own map and try to make different analyses and see what works.
Yeah. And then obviously we have the book that Cecilia has wrote, The Milky Way, are available on Amazon, and you can also order a print. So you do that on our webpage. And we have an offer. We call it that we would like you to be the next map speaker and lead the way. So we're going to do a half-a-day course, the 25th of January, where you actually bring your own organization. And if everything is going well with Jonathan and Hillary, we are going to create this new Mirrorverse. And again, we're going to try to simplify it even more. How many courses have we done together, Cecilia?
Oh, I don't know, but many.
Many, yeah, exactly, many. So the lesson here is always to make it even more simpler because we still think the easiest Milky Way map is still helping with the communication and understanding what happens. So it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to include all the details. It's still a powerful way to communicate. So you will bring your own organization. So there's this new acronym that we're going to use, copyright. So, and we will do the workshop within Miro. And if you have Airtable, that's cool. So then you can actually try that out as well. We will send out more.
And I know a lot of you guys are like loving to do testing new things out and see this as a learning opportunity. And we always say this is the latest misconception of what this organization is doing. So treat it like that. It's not going to be perfect, but it's at least some sort of idea to it. And then you can also go back to your organization and say that, you know, this is my latest misconception of what's going on here. Help me improve this. So at least you have some sort of seed to where to start.
Yeah. And in the beginning of February, we said January before, but I think it will be January. We will start the community of those who want to continue speaking maps fluently. So that is what we're going to work on in the next year. So we're really hoping that you want to join and do that. And we also got an answer earlier. So if we do the work for you, and that's basically what we have done before, so then of course we can create the map for you.
And we should say that we really don't want to do it for you, but with you, so that we train you to do this, and that you can continue on to work with the map and not be, we don't want you to be dependent on us. We want you to be able to do this work going forward on your own. Then thank you very much for tuning in, and just contact us. We'd love to answer your questions if you have any more coming up. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.